Hi, welcome to another class. We're going to look at commercial arithmetic 2, and our subtopic will be compound interest. So, what is compound interest? Let's define the same. This is the interest on loan or deposit calculated based on both the initial principal and the accumulated interest from previous periods. That is what we can define a compound interest to be, and you can be able to look at it in another way as the interest on interest. That's why we have the word compound interest. Then it is as a result of reinvesting rather than paying it out. So when you get the interest, instead of you being given out, then that interest is reinvested. That's where you come to have the compound interest. Now it may be calculated either annually, semi-annually, quarterly, monthly, or in any other given session or period that you're going to have. And the period after which it is compounded to the principal is referred to as interest period. That is the interest period. And then, even in a case you have the interest, the rate of interest is R% per annum. If the rate of interest, if the rate of compound interest is R% per annum, and the interest is calculated in n times in a year, because we have said that it can be annually, semi-annually, quarterly, and so on. So in 1 year, like if it is annually, it is only one. If it is semi-annually, it is twice, and so on. That is our n. So we are saying here that if the rate of compound interest is R% per annum, and the interest is calculated in n times per year, then the rate of interest per period will be the R% divided by n. Will be R divided by n percent. We can give an example here. We have, let's assume that the rate of interest is 14% per annum. If the rate of interest is 14% per annum and it is compounded maybe semi-annually. If it is compounded semi-annually, then the rate of interest per period is going to be, for semi-annually, you're saying in a year we have to times. Two semis are a half, so in a year you're going to have two semis, and of course we're going to now have the interest per period is going to be now the 14 R% per annum divided by the number of time. We are going to have 2 times, then you are going to get this is 7% per period, or for every semi part. That's how we can be able to calculate that. Now, after every interest period, the principal increases, and therefore the interest earned also increases. So after every interest period, the principal increases, and then the interest earned will also increase. You're going to see this in a short while. The sum of the principal and the compound interest is called the accumulated amount. The sum of the principal and the compounded interest is called accumulated amount. Let's have an example. An example 1 here. We have find the accumulated interest when 8,000 is invested for 2 years at the rate of 13% per annum. So we are going to find the compound interest when 80,000 is invested 2 years at the rate of 13% per annum. So in this case, remember we said that compound interest is given per period. It can either be annually, semi-annually, quarterly, and so on. Now in this case, it's compounded annually. So we are going to have, it is for 2 years, so we are going to have first year and the second year. So first year interest, will be interest, of course, given by principal times rate times time of 100, and in this case principal is 8,000 multiplied by the rate we have is 13%, then times time, the first year, so it is just 1 divided by 100, so these two is good to cancel. Then you have 800 times 13, and this you are going to get as 1040. So that is the interest in a first year. Now we had previously said that the interest is going to change, or the principal is going to change after every period. Now we have now the principal, the accumulated amount here will be the principal plus the interest, and our principal was 8,000, then plus 1,040. This you are going to get as 9,040 shillings. So this is going to be our new principal, or the amount at the end of the first payment or first year. So the second year interest will be second year interest will be P up T over 100, and then principal. Now we are going to use now the amount that we have accumulated at the first year, and then you are going to have 9,040 times rate is 13 times 1. This is second year, so the time is usually 1, and then over 100 there. So we are going to have that, then 904 times 13 over 10, and this we are going to have it as 1,175.2 shillings. So that is the interest we are going to get in the second year. Now the total interest, the question here is asking us to find the compound interest when 8,000 is invested for 2 years at the rate of 13%. So the interest, now the total interest, the first year interest is 1,040. The second year interest is 1,175.2. So we add the total interest, the total compound interest will be the first year interest, which is 1,040, and then we add 1,175.2, we get 2, 5, this is 11, color 1, 2, 2. So we have 2,215.2 shillings. So that is the total compound interest, or the compound interest that is going to be earned by 2,000 for the 2 years. Let's have example 2. Okay, example 2 reads, find the accumulated amount when 8,500 shillings is invested for 2 years at 5% per annum, compounded semi-annually. It's a good question. So we have the rate is given as 5% per annum. But our compound interest in this question is compounded semi-annually, meaning now our time is 2 years, but the compound interest is compounded annually. So the number of times per annum we have, there are 2 for 1 year. So we are going to have how many times? They are going to be 4, because 1 year is going to be having 2, and then of course 2 years are going to be having 4 periods. And then our rate per period is going to be the 5% divided by, in 1 year we have 2 periods, so we divide by 2, we get 2.5% per period. That is semi-annual. Now here we can start the first interest period. First interest period. I'm going to have interest is P T over 100, which we have 8,500 times the rate we have per period is 2.5 times time is usually 1 because it's the first period. Then you divide by 100. I have that divide, so you have 85 times 2.5, and this we get as 212.5. So that is shillings 212.5. That's the first interest period. Then we have the accumulated amount from the first period is going to be, now the principal is principal plus the interest. And the principal here is 8,500. We add the interest, which is 212.5, and this we have 8,712.5. So that is the amount of the first period. We have 4 periods. We go to the second interest period. So the second interest period, the principal now is going to change, is going to be amount of the first period, which is 8,712.5. So interest PRT over 100 is we are going to have 8,712.5 times the rate 2.5 times usual 1 divided by 100. And this, we are going to get it as 217.8 approximately, 217.80. So that is the second interest period. And then you get the amount after this second interest. So we take the principal we had, that is the new principal we had there after the first period, the 8,712.5. We add now the interest we have gotten a second period, which is 217.8. This is going to get 8,712.5 plus 217.80. We have 8,930.30. So we have that as accumulated amount after the second period. Then we move on to the third period, that is the third interest period. That interest period now, we have interest is PLT over 100. Then the principal here is going to be the second accumulated amount there, which is 8,930.30 times 2.5, that's our rate, and then times 1 all over 100, and this we are going to have it as 223.3 223.30. That is that interest period is going to earn 223.30. And if you can be able to check here, our interest is increasing. The first interest was 212, and the second one was 217. Then the third one is 223. This is what we talk about the compound interest, because you're increasing the principal after every period. Then accumulated amount after the third session is going to be the principal we had there 8,930.30. We add now 223.30, and this is going to give us amount is going to give us 9,153.60. That is the accumulated amount after the that session. So now we go to the last session, that is the when n is 4 now, the fourth interest period. We have the interest would be PRT over 100. That is principal now is going to be 9,153.60 times 2.5, and then times 1 divided by 100. We have said time is usually 1 because it's per period, and then our interest, our rate was 2.5. Yeah. So when we multiply the two, we are going to have 228.8. This is going to be 228.80. That is the interest on the fourth period. Now amount after the fourth period is going to be our principal here, which was 9,153.60. We add now 228.80, and this we are going to get as 9,382.4. That's the approximate amount that you're going to have after 2 years, when 8,500 is compounded semi-annually. That's the process of getting a compound interest.